Well, let's get more on this now with Laura Haigh. She's a Myanmar researcher with Amnesty International, and she joins me now from London. Thank you very much for joining us here on TRT World. Laura, could we expect to find other massacres?
Absolutely. This is absolutely the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the mass killings that the Myanmar military have committed over the course of this campaign of violence. And let's also remember that it's not just mass killings that they've committed, it is mass rape, burning of Rohingya homes and villages. And I think what the Reuters report shows today is that these cases and these graves are going to continue to be exposed.
And military claims that they're terrorists. Is this true?
I mean, this is a claim that the government have made throughout this campaign of violence, and that's not to say, obviously, that there weren't attacks on security forces back in August, but the government has consistently claimed that its response, these so-called clearance operations, are an attempt to track down the so-called terrorists. What's very clear is that these operations have not done that. They have targeted the entire Rohingya community as a whole. And I think what Reuters report today does is put this very clearly, shows very clearly that actually what happened was the deliberate targeting of Rohingya villages, as opposed to, any sort of meaningful attempt to apprehend the attackers.
And is this a first time of photographic evidence, really?
I think there's been a lot of photographic evidence that has come through from Rohingya activists as well during, since August. What I think this evidence shows is very clearly how well documented this is. And I think what's also important is that Reuters actually spoke to not only Rohingya villagers and their family members, but they actually spoke to members of the security forces themselves and Buddhist villagers who also confirmed these killings. I think it's also important to remember that two of the Reuters journalists who were responsible for this reporting are currently in prison in Myanmar, facing 14 years in jail. They have to be released. Clearly what they were doing was reporting on military atrocities.
And the international community has been rather powerless when it comes to dealing with the treatment of the Rohingya. So what can be really done?
You're absolutely right. The international community has just absolutely failed to grasp the severity of this situation. I think there are a number of things we want to see. The UN Security Council will be meeting next week to discuss the situation in Myanmar. It is high time for a global arms embargo against the Myanmar military and targeted sanctions on senior officials responsible for these crimes. But it's also important that we start to look at accountability. These crimes cannot go unpunished. The international community needs to pressure Myanmar much more than it is currently doing to allow access to the UN-mandated fact-finding mission and send a very clear message that these abuses won't go unpunished.
Well, many thanks for that insight, Laura, there.